rendition of how you can deepen your relationships, your Valentine, your sweetheart, spouse, hopefully they're the same, or girlfriend, boyfriend, partner, significant other. What else do we call them these days? So there's a lot of... We know nobody ever knows what we're talking about anymore. So NLP training concepts. I am a certified trainer and master practitioner, and I'm going to talk to you and give you some tips about how you can make your Valentine's Day and the rest of your day very, very special. So, any questions from my peanut gallery here before I get started?
We got Deb Durkee, and I'm sitting here. We both are familiar, and we've been to your classes, so, you know, we're ready. Of course, we're ready to hear some tips.
Okay. So let me talk first about the types of things that people do that really create havoc in relationships and what to do about them. So, in fact, my significant other and I just the other day had a little misunderstanding about something. And one of the things that people do is they built up expectations of what people should be doing in a relationship. And I watch people get really, really hurt and really mad or develop a lot of resentment because they have an expectation of what this person is going to do or how they're going to behave, or they have an idea. They're called maps in NLP. We have maps of reality, not really reality. And those maps of reality or expectations get in the way of really having taking full advantage of the blessing, as our coach called it, of a relationship that we can get. And this happens everywhere, in business and in our personal life, where we can get very disappointed if that person doesn't do what we think that we want them to do. Second thing is that people basically model their parents, and they take that model into relationships. So if your parents modeled for you a great relationship and were married for a long time and loved each other and respected each other and took responsibility for their own happiness, you probably have a pretty good model. But most of us did not. Most of us grew up in a situation where our parents didn't always do those things. So we have an idea that that's the way things are supposed to be. In fact, Bert Hellinger, who created a model of therapy around family, says that we carry our family mind around in our head, and we recreate it over and over again in our businesses and at work, at home, those sorts of things. Those are all the bad things. Okay. And then conflict. What do we do with conflict? We start, when we don't focus on their behavior, we just start calling them names. That's never going to get us where we want to go. So here are the things that you can do to deepen your relationship. Is, first of all, let go of your expectations. The person's just doing the best that they can. I believe that's an NLP presupposition. And the second thing is if there is conflict, there's actually a wonderful model called the Kharkov listening model, which sometimes I teach in my classes, and it's just repeating back. If you're getting criticism from your relationship, the person that you're in a relationship with, go ahead and just repeat back what they're saying. So if they are giving you a criticism of something, then you just say, so what I'm hearing you say is, and just repeat what they say. And once you do that, without making any kind of judgment about it, guess what will happen? You stay out of your stuff and your negative self-talk about it, and can listen to the person and get a clear idea of what they're talking about.
Yeah, and they feel listened to
as well. That's right. They feel listened to. Mm-hmm. Because usually, and by the way, there are differences in the way men and women communicate, just FYI. And you can actually Google that, the differences between men and women in relationships, communication, and you can find some very interesting articles on that. And I won't go into that, but you can find out a lot of really interesting information, like how men's skulls are thicker than women's,
No.
which is where,
But then I knew they
according
were
to one article, where they get that
Yeah.
Their skin is
hard-headedness.
thicker.
Their skin is thicker, yeah. So, but there are differences between the way men and women and communicate, and it's
Sometimes their breasts are bigger.
and it's important
That's
that
not
you
good.
understand those differences and give your partner what they need in order to understand you. Okay, so that's one of them. Then another question to ask yourself is, who's responsible for your happiness?
Yourself.
Right. Do you know how many
absolutely.
times people are in relationships that think it's their partner that makes them happy? So if you run that particular experience or map, then what happens is when your partner behaves in a way that is upsetting to you, then you're unhappy. I knew of a couple one time who were in a pretty miserable marriage, and I won't name names. However, they were in a pretty miserable marriage, and after a couple of years of this, the man decided that he would take 100% responsibility. Actually, they had been married for 7 years, and for a year, he had decided that he would take 100% responsibility for his happiness in the relationship. And for a year, they had the most wonderful relationship that they could have ever had. And then she asked for a divorce. She didn't want to be happy. So those are some of the unconscious
Oh, what
patterns.
a sad story.
I know, it is a sad story.
Do you have his telephone number?
But he did actually meet somebody after that.
Well, he needs
that
Steve Bruneman.
wanted to be happy in a relationship. So sometimes we are in relationships with partners that don't want to take that responsibility, and that's something to pay attention to.
And
So-
but there's a happy medium. You weren't here when Steve was talking, but he did talk about, you've got to. I'm very knowledgeable of that. I believe it's about your own happiness, but I have to remember there's another person too there,
That's right.
and I can't just live in my
Right,
own world.
it's not
Yeah.
about living in your own world.
Yeah.
But it's not putting that
everything.
kind of expectation on the other person, because that means they have to be perfect.
Yeah, and if something
our
happens
mind.
to my dear love that I love, I'll be okay. I doubt I'll marry again. And somebody says, "Well, how can that be?" I said, "Because I'm pretty happy."
Right, with
You know,
ourselves. So
you
that's
know,
part of
I mean,
part of
It's a lot of
connecting
work
with
to be
another.
with somebody,
That
you know?
is a lot of work. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think people that, because y'all have been in long-term relationships and presently, and we all know that they take a lot of work and on a daily basis, and so a lot of times people give lip service to that, but they really don't understand that it's a lot of work. And the more aware you can be of language patterns and what to do when things aren't working, because it feels really good when it's working, but no matter how good the relationship is, there's going to be situations
met
in which
the-
we have to deal with it. If you avoid conflict, that's not necessarily wonderful, and if you build up a lot of expectations, there has to be some flexibility there. Then another thing is to just be present. If your spouse or significant other is talking with you, then stop what you're doing. In fact, mine can always tell when he calls a couple of times a day at least, and
That's good.
when he's out, yeah. And so he'll call and he'll say, "Are you at the computer?" Because he can tell that I'll start messing around on the computer. He goes, "Get away from the computer, Susan. I want to talk to
And
you."
talk
Yeah.
to me. My boyfriend does that too.
Yeah. So anybody can tell whether you're present. And I remember having a client years ago, one of the things that he worked on in one of the classes was when he was very intense on a particular TV program, which we all can do, all get focused on something that we're doing, and our spouse or our significant others trying to get our attention about something, is to stop what we're doing and just let it go for a second and go to them and listen to what they have to say, and then either deal with it at that point or make an appointment to deal with it later. So Kathy wanted me to talk about matching and pacing, because there actually is a number of relationship books out there that are very, very excellent. Some of them are NLP based. Some of them are just great relationship books. And one of them, not necessarily NLP based, although of course NLP is about language and how it affects us. So you see that model in a lot of different books. And it's called Conscious Loving by Gay and Kathleen Hendricks. It's a couple of therapists in
I love their books.
California, yeah. And even in the first, they usually have, in the first book they have, the Conscious Loving book, they have a part 1, which is all their information, and then they have a part 2, which is exercises. And the first exercise in that book is you sit knee to knee for 10 minutes and you breathe with each other. Now, when we match behaviorally, we naturally match and pace people's body language, and we match and pace the tone of their voice and the pace of their voice when we have that connection. So if you watch yourself, if you feel like you're being attacked, do you keep in rapport with them, or do you go back and dissociate and stop listening and go into your own experience rather than being present with them and just listening to what they have to say? Then I remember years ago when I was in a different relationship than I am now, one of my marriages actually, and this person, I was just learning the NLP model and the Kharkov listening model, and this person said, I have to tell you some things that are really bothering me. And at the time, it was very, very hard for me to take any kind of feedback whatsoever, because I thought it was about me. And that's the one thing in the NLP model, we separate behavior from ourself. We are not our behavior. We do things. We all behave in certain ways in certain situations that work wonderfully, and then we behave in certain ways that don't work wonderfully. But behavior has nothing to do with ourself. And so he started in on all of these things that I was doing that he didn't like. And so I immediately put on my NLP hat and I said, oh, so the woman that you're with is doing this and this. And so I dissociated it in my language pattern so I could listen to it. And then there was only one time where I said, wait a minute, NLP hat goes off and I go, rah, 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 and then I go, hat back on, and then back into the conversation, just pacing him with the statements that he was making. And actually, we got a lot out of that, because it's not, all I needed to do was listen, and it wasn't anything that I couldn't do something about. And so it worked out really well. So matching and pacing, especially with the body language and breathing. Now, when we match breathing, you match a person at the core of their thinking process. We really match them at a very, very deep level. And in fact, if you sleep with someone or you sleep with this person, your breathing gets entrained over time. So you want to make sure that you match a person's breathing, that you want a deep, intimate relationship, because rapport is something that happens from the surface all the way down to deep intimacy. And if you make a habit of matching their breathing, that's excellent. I would not suggest that you go around and match a lot of other people's breathing, because there's some ramifications there that you may not want to deal with.
Well, it makes you feel, I mean, that can be very intimate. So if you want
it's very intimate.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about, love. So let's get to the point. If you on Valentine's Day night, if you want to kind of or you just want to rev up the engines a little bit,
right?
Start matching
their breathing. Right, match their breathing. And in fact, if you watch them carefully, you have to listen to what they're saying, obviously, but the pauses in conversations can be used to your advantage, so that you can breathe with them, and that very much enhances the depth of your experience with them. In fact, even if you've been in conflict, you can always, I mean, that's what makeup sex is all about. I mean, if you, right?
Yes.
Is that a lot of that is about breathing, because you obviously, my experience has been that during sex you breathe with the other person, and so part of that is at a very deep animal level, you're getting back into rapport with them. If you notice, even your pets, I notice my dogs,